Good morning, everyone. Hello, and thank you for joining Washington University's Olin Business School today for our webinar for admitted SMP students on top career questions that we've heard from students. We brought in one of our experts from the Western Career Center. We'll talk with you about their process and a little bit more about the process here at Olin and some realistic goals we could talk about and some outcomes. And we'll go through that whole process and then hopefully leave some time for questions for you today. But before we get started, I want to cover some housekeeping matters to make sure that everyone has the best experience possible during today's webinar. And so just to let you know, I want to make sure that everyone is set up to enjoy today's presentation. So I have muted your microphones so that we can reduce background noise. And if anyone is having trouble hearing me now or anytime throughout the presentation today, please use the raise your hand function that's on the chat box, or you can go ahead and send a chat box message. I'll be reading through those during today's webinar just in case there is any trouble that individuals are having. And so just to let you know, I don't see anyone there, so we'll go ahead and get going. And just so you know that this webinar will be recorded, and so if you have to leave early for any reason or you have a friend that wasn't able to attend today, please let them know, and you for yourself, don't worry. I'll be sending out a link with the recorded webinar by email as soon as it becomes available. And we will be taking questions at the end of today's presentation. We'll spend a little bit of time hopefully answering the questions that you have. But please feel free to leave your questions in the Q&A function at any time during today's presentation. And if it doesn't seem like the question maybe benefits the larger group or we run out of time to answer everyone's questions, I'll make sure to follow up directly with you by the end of next week. Wonderful. And so I don't see anyone's hand or any problem hearing us, so I will go ahead and introduce myself. So I'm on the right side there. My name is Colton Richardson. I'm a graduate programs recruiter here at Olin Business School. So some of you might have been in contact with me before, and so happy to see you again. And some others may have been prospects or students of another one of our recruiters here in the office, but I'm happy to meet you all. And I will let Greg introduce himself.
Thanks, Colton. Thanks for having me here today, too. I really appreciate the opportunity to speak to admitted students. My name is Greg Hutchings. I am a senior advisor in the Western Career Center. I've played several roles here at the Olin Business School, being director of the Western Career Center at one point and also director of the SMP program. So I have a close relationship with many of the SMP students here on campus and really enjoy working with our SMP students. I focus mainly on the finance functions because my prior life was investment banking for 15 years and then also real estate development for 7 years. So I try to bring my corporate experience to the programs that we have within the Western Career Center. You know, if you can flip to the next page, I think it's really important to take a look at what we try to do and what our mission is at the Western Career Center. I think one is to give you skills that you can use the rest of your life, those job search skills, the skills of knowing how to use LinkedIn, the skills to really think about how to target your career and be successful. The other one is where the Western Career Center tries to build long-term relationships with employers. We view employers as really our customers and students as our partners. As I look down the page here, our philosophy and approach to you as a partner, I think, is really key in this process. I would say one of the things, the analogy I like to use is the player-coach analogy, where we act as your coach, you're the player out on the field, whether it's, think of a soccer player, a football player, a basketball player. You really have to be the person to run the plays. The companies really want to speak to you, but we're here on the sidelines trying to help guide you, and it's important that you take that initiative in this process. One of the things that I think is important is that each student is unique. It's not just a mass operation we try to run. Your career search needs are unique, and that we try to provide that customized expertise and advising to help you with your needs. The third bullet point is early continuous engagement with the WCC leads to success. The students who engage with us the most have the most success. There's no doubt about it. If you tend to back away from the career search process during your academic time here, you will not be as successful. So engaging with the WCC, taking part in our training activities, our communication skills activities, our job search activities, roadshows that we put on, taking part in all those events and programs will really help you in this process. And I would say devote some portion of your day, every day, to the career search process. It could be 5 or 10 minutes trying to search for an alum on LinkedIn, or perhaps it's trying to research an industry. And so I would say make that part of your work every day. Treat it like another class while you're there. So the other thing that I mentioned earlier was we teach a lifelong career management skill. So most likely you will be changing jobs probably every 5 to 7 years of your life. And so knowing how to keep that search going all the time, updating your resume, updating LinkedIn, really knowing how to build a network of relationships to help you in your career becomes really, really important. So we try to teach not only helping you get a job as you graduate from the program, but also those skills that you can take with you the rest of your life. One of the things that is also mentioned on here is working within a club. So when you come here to WashU, I really encourage you to join the clubs. The clubs play a very important role in the career search process. Many of our clubs have great programs that can help you. For example, the Olin Finance Club, they have a great system of showing you how to research companies and how to find public information on publicly traded companies and privately held companies. And they put together a compendium of those research techniques that you can use. You'll use this not only in your classes, but you will use it most definitely for the career search process. So the clubs also play a role in bringing in speakers, bringing in companies, and they act as sort of that connector between students and companies. So the WCC really works very closely with the clubs and relies on the clubs to do that. So I would highly encourage you to join clubs. We have many clubs that you can join, whether it's in marketing and customer analytics, or whether it's in finance or quantitative finance. We have some really great clubs where students have done an outstanding job and really showed their leadership skills. So in the last bullet point, as I mentioned earlier, the career search process is where you have to be the player on the field. You really have to own your career search process. You have to be the initiator. Companies want to speak to you. They don't want to speak to me or other advisors. They want to see that you have that initiative to really reach out to them and learn about their industry, learn about their functions that they perform, and that you really want a career and can give good, solid reasons as to why you are a fit for the job. And you'll hear me say this a lot, and every advisor say, it's all about fit. It's finding the right fit. So again, you have to own the career search process. It's something that you have to take initiative with and really focus through that. We can help guide you, help coach you through that process. So one of the things that we like to show is some of the expertise that we can bring to the table. In this case, you'll see on the next page some of the expertise that we can bring. You know, we have hired many people from industry like myself because we think we bring more credibility to the table, not only with companies, but also with you. We've been on that other side of the table trying to recruit students before. We have many people who are great, have great skills in communications. And we have a management communication center that really helps students with writing, with speaking, and those professionals have done a great job, especially with our international students. We also have critical thinking classes, and so for many of the SMP programs, there's a required communication class, and those classes really help you to put on a professional presentations if you were presenting to a company. And those classes divide you up into teams. you work on your arguments, and then you create PowerPoint slides that you can then present. And I've seen students really transform themselves through that course. Lots of career education programs before you even start. We love to get people involved in the process, and early work on your resume, cover letter, your value proposition that you give in a behavioral interview becomes really, really important in this. Again, clubs, relying on clubs, other alums from your programs, the faculty, and other parts of the curriculum can help you prepare for your interviews. We also have run some very successful programs such as Meet the Firms and Global Talent Day. In September, the second and third week of September, we roll out something called Meet the Firms. We bring in 60 firms for each of those days, so about 120 firms total. Those Meet the Firms usually take place, second and third week, and it gives you a great chance to start right as you get here, meeting with firms and engaging in the recruiting activity. We want recruiting to be a big part of your life while you're here. Global Talent Day is where we bring in firms that do look at international students, and the alums from those firms come in. We've had very successful global talent days. We do one in the fall and we do one in the spring. So on and off campus recruiting. So we've seen recruiting change over the years, and now we see firms who like to do virtual interviews rather than coming on campus to do the first interview. They will do a virtual interview. There's a system called HireView that some financial service firms use. Some of the firms like to do a virtual career fair. We're doing one of those, I believe it's April 20th. And we do treks, or as I say, road shows. And we've had some very successful treks here in the last year. For example, I take the quantitative finance students up to Boston and New York. We talked to large asset management firms, both in Boston and New York. I did a trek to Hong Kong with our accounting students, January 4th and 5th, and then January 8th and 9th, we did a financial services roadshow that focused mainly on asset management and private wealth management companies. So we have some very good, I think, programs like that. We actually get to go meet the firms. You get to see our alums in these firms, and you get a real sense of the corporate culture of these firms. So we try to focus on firms that do sponsor people for the H-1B visa. I will tell you the immigration system has become more challenging here since 2016. And so we try to really target the firms that do sponsor H-1B visa students. We encourage you to also at the same time look overseas. And I think that's what's so important about the Hong Kong Roadshow that we did, because we have some great alums, for example, in Hong Kong, Shanghai, Singapore, and I think as the WCC moves forward, we'll have dedicated business development resources that will be looking at trying to develop those opportunities in Asia. But I was extremely pleased with how our Hong Kong Roadshow went. Treks, went back in January, and I think there's more there that we can tap into. And then other resources for international students, you can see some of the online resources that we have, and we have peer advisors, we have online resources like Going Global, Global Workplace, and we bring in a person called Judy Shen-Filerman from Dreambridge Partners. She's wonderful at working with students on the acculturation side of the page, especially as it comes to the job search, and she was here just this past week, in fact. So one of my favorite people to work with. So hopefully this page here gives you that overall view of things that we try to offer students and to really help you in that job search. It's a tall order because you're here either 2 semesters or 3 semesters. And there's a lot to get done. It's not the luxury of a 4-year undergraduate degree where you get many semesters here over a 4-year period. We're trying to put a lot into your program while you're here for that 2 semesters or 3 semesters. Okay, the next page kind of gives a student career roadmap. And what I really like to do is focus on that first column called assess. I can't tell you how important that is. And that assess means really assessing yourself, really understanding what your interests are, what your skills are, what your talents are, and what motivates you in the job search. And if I could put one big sign up in my office in bold red letters, it would be know thyself. Because once you know yourself, the rest of the job search, everything else on this page becomes a whole lot easier. It's not without some trials and tribulations along the way, but when students really know themselves and they know which direction they need to go with their career, and what type of function they need to be in, what type of industry, what type of company culture, they really get motivated. And I can look at their face and see a difference when that happens. So the assess function becomes the key to the whole process. It's no mistake we put it on the far left. And this whole chart runs in sequence from left to right. So doing the assessment at the start is really, really important. And so we have tools to help with that. We have something called Career Leader. It's an online self-assessment exam. It was developed at Harvard Business School. It's been used the last at least 20 years by most business schools in the U.S., and it's been adopted at schools overseas as well. But it really helps you assess your skills, your interests, and your motivators. And with that, it gives some sample career options that might fit you. But it gives us a good base read on who you are and what direction you may need to go. So again, cannot stress that first column on the left the most. Okay, so here are some of the firms that hire our students from graduate at the graduate level here at the business school, either specialized master's or MBA. And we've really worked hard to develop some very good relationships with these firms. They're highly selective places to get into, but we work really hard to try and keep in front of these companies and make sure that they come here to recruit, either on campus, or we include them in a roadshow, or we find some way to connect with them through a club. But I think you'll see some great names here, and something to think about. It's a mix of professional service firms, for example, consulting firms, or investment banks, accounting firms, or large companies that are in technology or manufacturing or the energy sector. So I think it's a great group of companies that we have represented.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Greg. And we'll continue on with some, with some questions here in just a minute. But one thing I wanted to draw your attention to, so as admitted students, you should have access to this new admits page that gives you all of your new admit checklist and some information for you. It was included in your admission letter. But I wanted to draw your attention to the resources tab up at the top. I get a lot of questions from students about how can I find some more information. And this is a great place to start. Because on that resources tab, once you click in, you actually have, I highlighted it there for you, a section about the Weston Career Center. So it gives you a little bit of a breakdown in some LinkedIn intensive courses for students right below. But then if you were to click on that Weston Career Center, it takes you right to that web page where you can see on the top there under your career, you can talk about your career action plan, communication skills, networking, evaluating job offers, really starting from the beginning, as Greg had mentioned, in that very important assess phase. Extremely important for students, and having the conversation around what are those interests and how can I work towards that right side of that chart. You have to start at that left side. And kind of give you some related links down on the bottom I wanted to highlight for you. The Olin Career Guide, as well as the Specialized Master's Timeline. And so it gives you a little bit more information about those, excuse me, as well as if anyone hasn't had the opportunity to, or is still trying to find, the employment report is also something that you can find here and go through that information as well. I know we probably have a few questions today about that employment report, and that's one on specifics. I know we do have some about certain areas or statistics. I'd be happy to follow up a little bit more with individuals. So I think, Karsten, I'd be happy to follow up with you once we're finished here and give you a little bit more in-depth information about certain areas in that employment report. But like Greg mentioned, it gives you a great overview on that employment report of the companies that hire our students out of. Western Career Center has actually done a fantastic job of even breaking it down by degree. So you can see students in our Master of Finance, corporate finance, or quantitative finance, our analytics students. You can see some different placement for those students in the past 3 years. So that is a fantastic resource as well when you're evaluating that end goal. But again, starting on that assess, that far left side is such a big thing coming in. And so wonderful. We have just about 8 to 10 minutes left for today's webinar. And so it is that conversation I want to have. We have a few questions that I want to make sure that we talk about, and as well as mixing in some questions that we've received. And I imagine that the questions that I get most of the time will also be questions that are in the Q&A box. So I want to make sure that we get those answered today. But really, I think to start off with, one question I get a lot, Greg, that I'd love to hear some more is, when can an SMP student begin to engage with the Western Career Center?
Well, I would encourage students to start over the summer because, again, recruiting cycles for certain companies, not all companies, but many of the companies start to look at students in September. And so be prepared over the summer with getting your resume into the Olin format. Very key to do that. Recruiters love all the resumes to look like the Olin resume. It makes their job easier as they do resumes. But I think working on your resume, working on your value proposition, and that's really thinking about kind of making an inventory of what you're good at, or what makes you unique, or what skill sets do you have that may set you apart from other classmates, or where you have certain character traits, whether it's you like working in teams, or you like to work individually, or whatever. And I think really working on those things, you not only help write your cover letter, you actually help prepare yourself for the behavior. So I think that's key. So I would say over the summer, working on your resume and thinking about your cover letter. The career guide that we have, the WCC career guide, is online. It is a great resource. We have perfected that book over many years and includes tons of good information. So you'll see many resume examples, and on your resume, okay, here I'm gonna make make my big point here. Make sure at the bottom where you see skills and interests that you add your personal interests. Okay, employers love to hear about that stuff. They want to know about it because when they hire someone, they hire the whole person, and they want to know, do you have interests outside of work? Are you well-rounded? Are you intellectually curious? Those are things that interest section can be on there. I know some students say, "Gosh, that's not professional to have that on there," and I'm saying, no. I will tell you, when I did recruiting and hired entry-level people, one of my first questions was often about your interests, and trying to maybe even establishing a common bond between you and me if there was some interest I had that you also had. So over the summer, working on all those things would be really, really important.
Wonderful. And I know you spoke about the off-campus experiences, road shows, or company visits. Mm-hmm. And so how does a student engage in those? And how do they get involved?
Well, I'll give you an example. I've worked a lot with the Quantitative Finance Club, for example. And with that club, let me back up. With the quantitative finance students, the WCC sponsors a roadshow or a trek that I mentioned to Boston and New York. And in Boston, we visit the large mutual funds, Fidelity and Wellington, where we have alums. And in New York, we visit not only large asset management firms, but hedge funds as well. So it's number one, it's a great education. And that's something you sign up for, you pay your own way. WCC does a great job of setting up the company visits, having everything arranged once you're there in the city, but you pay your own airfare, your own hotel, or accommodations for it. The companies know that you're paying your own way, and because of that, they know you have skin in the game and that they know you're serious about being there. You as a student really need to do the research on every company that we visit and be well prepared with questions. One of the things I really make students do is come prepared with questions, because the companies want to hear you ask questions. It shows that you're engaged with them in the presentation. It shows that you're serious about the business. Anyway, that is an example where the WCC puts on a roadshow. The quant students also have their own club, and they are actually every October doing a roadshow at Chicago. There are many proprietary trading firms in Chicago. Chicago is a hub for commodities trading, derivatives trading, options trading. So the students try to visit the alums at the various firms up in Chicago, whether they're trading firms, research firms, asset management firms, and they do a great job of putting that together. And I work with them to help with that, with that trip. So that's one example just on the quant finance side. Today, in contrast with the supply chain students, they're actually visiting the Toyota plant in Indiana. So the supply chain club, SCOPA, is doing a visit to the Toyota plant in Indiana today. They got a bus together and traveled there. And so all the clubs and WCC, I think, really try to encourage where students reach out to companies. Companies actually prefer that, and we're seeing much more importance on doing these treks and roadshows. I would say every school has told us it's less on-campus activity, much more where they love having the students come to them and visit. And quite frankly, I think it's in your favor to do these treks, because you don't really understand a company's culture until you step into their office, you step into the you can feel the difference between the firms. So it's a great learning experience for them.
It's great. And I know we did have a question about sending slides. And so just to let you know, yes, we will be sending out the webinar, recorded webinar, once by the end of, by when it comes available. And so you will have this information later as well. So you can hear those questions and also get those answers at a later time. And so you will get the information. It won't come directly from the slides, but you will have this recorded webinar to refer to at a later time. Wonderful. And I know quite a few questions about internships and the importance of internships either before your program or after your program. Okay. And so can you just talk a little bit about that internship portion?
So I think, again, looking back at my experience when recruiting at an investment bank, one of the things I really focused on for analyst level hires and for supply chain students, quant students, customer analytics students, you're really going to be considered as an analyst, not as an associate. MBAs have full-time work experience before they get there. But people in the SMP program have internship experience. And those internships become really, really key. And when I did recruiting, I focused a lot on people's internships and what they gained out of those experiences. So I asked them, in fact, that exact question: what did you gain out of this internship experience? So being able to talk about each one of your internship experiences, maybe how you solved the problem, maybe how you, there was some goal that you got accomplished during that 8 or 10 week period, becomes really, really important. For the students in the 3-semester programs who are with us today, I would say, the internship becomes very important to getting the full-time job, which hopefully is offered to you, and that you can start after you graduate in December. Many companies do hire their full-time hires out of their summer interns, and the summer internship becomes a way to shall I say, test drive the candidate. The great thing is you get to test drive the company during that experience too. And again, it's all about the company sees if you're fit, you get to see if you're fit. So internships become really, really important in many ways in this process.
Wonderful. And then going a little bit more about international students and working in the U.S., you spoke a little bit about that in the process in the slides before. Can you talk a little bit about kind of the preparation that some students might take in the preparing of wanting to stay in the U.S. versus the potential to stay in the U.S. after they're done?
So I would say, as I mentioned earlier, and as Colton has alluded to, the immigration situation has become more difficult here in the United States. Companies are having, let me say, it's more of a challenge to get U.S. companies to hire international students. I think students in STEM programs have the best advantage in that because you get 36 months OPT, you get 3 tries at the H-1B visa. I'd say there's a higher likelihood of success. I'd say probably very high likelihood that you'll eventually be successful on one of those visa lotteries when you get 3 tries at it. With one having only 12 months OPT, I think that's going to be very difficult. There's probably 290,000 applications a year for the H-1B visa, and the U.S. government brings in 85,000 people on the H-1B visa. So it kind of tells you what the odds are. So with that, I think as we go forward here at Olin, you'll see a commitment to really developing opportunities for jobs in Asia. We have, as I mentioned, great alums, especially in cities like Shanghai and Hong Kong. I think also Singapore and Mumbai will be places that we'll focus on as well, and probably Beijing. But I know just having done the Hong Kong roadshow, I was so happy to contact some of my former students in Hong Kong and hear their willingness to engage with the school, really help out, be a part of that track where we can visit their company. And so I think we're going to see more emphasis on that. I think any school will tell you that really looking in your home country and looking in the U.S. has got to be equally important. I would not put the U.S. above your home country. I think this is just the state of the world that we're in right now. And having talked to people who just came back from a career services conference, they're hearing the same story that we still. So.
Thank you, Greg, for that. And I know it's one thing of kind of having that expectation coming in, and we want to really make sure that we let you know and have that conversation early. So I'd be happy to follow up if anyone has any questions later on. And so one of our last questions for today is what you should do to prepare to go into the WCC. So we've talked a lot about the processes that you need to take and a lot of those prep that you need to do internally for yourself. So again, hitting in, I know I've said it a couple times, when we say it again, hitting in on that assess portion of yourself. So learning as much about yourself as you can before you go in and have those conversations, and even preparing a resume, preparing a little on conversational interviews, having those preparations done to go in will help accelerate that, Greg, if I'm correct, to accelerate that process rather than coming in and just wanting to start cold.
I think if you really want to have a very productive advising session when you first start here, having your resume put together in the Olin format, one page, and really thinking through how you worded every bullet point on that, having your at least a first draft of your cover letter, and then doing something like Career Leader. I think having that ready for your first advising appointment, all that, and that's a lot more work than what you think. But the career guide can give you some help with that and everything. But I think that way you make really effective use of time of your advisor, and the advisor will love you for that.
Yeah.
So pre-work is essential, as they say. And any research you can do on industries or alums becomes really, really important. I would say reaching out to alums, you only do that after you get all this foundation. Because if you reach out to alums too early, there's a problem. You're not going to have your story ready, and you get one shot at trying to make a good impression. If you don't make a good impression, it's not going to work. So doing all this foundational work with the resume, your story, career leader, first draft of a cover letter, I think becomes really, really important.
Wonderful. And so I do want to thank Greg so much for coming in today and helping answer all these questions. I know it's really wonderful for students to be able just to hear those beginning steps for themselves and dive a little deeper. To give you a little bit of what's coming next, some future events that we'll be having here in the office. So a very popular one for us and We'll be having some of our, excuse me, student affairs staff, as well as some people that you'll meet in the future, have a webinar with us in the future. That'll be that Passport Program webinar, April 11th. So please, if you have any questions about the Passport Program, please feel free to join us and get those questions answered. As well as you can see, our Olin Financial Services webinar will be happening 2 days after on April 13th. Our grad programs webinar is focusing on research centers at Olin. So anyone that's very interested in research or the research opportunities for them, that one will be April 18th. Our admitted student weekend. So any of our domestic students who are in the US or any of our international students who wanted to join us on that day, April 20th through the 22nd for our admitted students on campus here at Olin. And if you have more questions about that, please feel free to reach out to our office and we'd be happy to answer those for you. And then the last one, just a reminder for anyone in round 3 that was recently admitted to our programs, your deposit deadline is April 25th. And so please, if you have any questions around that or any of these webinars, please feel free to reach out. And that's where I'll say, if you ever have any questions, please feel free. The email at the bottom of the page there, olingradadmissions@wustl.edu. WUSTL.edu. That one will be a fantastic place to send any of those questions, and they will make sure they get to people like myself that can reach out and answer them. But I just want to say thank you so much for spending the time with us today. I know if you are an international student that's with us, it's probably late in the evening there for you, and I appreciate you taking the time. Or if you're a domestic student waking up in the morning on the on the West Coast, good morning to you, and thank you so much for taking the time with us today. But if you have any questions, please feel free to let us know. But we will sign off for today, and I will speak with you later.